Good morning, all. Thanks for joining. As I mentioned last week, we are going to pick up a new topic this week. I think we already completed 5 major areas of Azure Architect. The AZ303 exam required nearly like a 9 different topic. 5 major topics we already completed. As you can see here, network infrastructure, storage, compute, and infrastructure operations. Last week we finished data platform. So now we are going to enter into architecting message broking and serverless applications. The name itself gives you some background. It's going to talk about some message broking and serverless. I think during the Azure fundamental course, we gone through some of the serverless components, and we also familiar with some of the message broking technologies with Azure. So today we'll focus on that, and I also have one interesting demo, which I probably like we will continue that. So again, on this particular learning, we have a various topic, and each topic there will be a set of items you are going to learn. And today we are going to focus on first two items, like a create serverless logic with Azure Function, and then we also going to work on route and process data automatically using Logic App. So this two title gives us that we are going to talk about Azure Function and Logic App. Apart from that, in the upcoming weeks, we are going to learn various component. These components already familiar to us, but we will be going into practical learning, like how this can be helpful in a day-to-day job. If you are a developer or engineer, how are you consuming these services? So let me take you to the next area, like where first we need to understand serverless, right? Serverless, most of you already know this from the fundamental course. So serverless is like you're going to get your function or piece of code to run somewhere, and for that you don't need underlying infrastructure. Normally, when you want to run your piece of code or your application, either you need a virtual machine or a container to run your application or your business logic. Maybe you are writing a small console application or your business logic in some event handlers. You develop a piece of code that will be running in some machine. Whenever the front end need a business logic, they call it, and that could be sitting in the same machine or different machine. Then the business function operates. So normally in a on-premises environment or somewhere where they didn't modernize their cloud technology, then obviously what they will be doing, for a small piece of code, they will be allocating a dedicated resource, which is virtual machine. The virtual machine, obviously, you know that you need a storage, you need a network, and then depend on your virtual machine capacity, you will be the cost is charged. So why we need to allocate a infrastructure resource just for a piece of code to run on demand? It is not going to be running like 24 by 7. It's going to be running it on demand. For example, I think we have some interesting example here. So this we gone through during our high level discussion during the Azure fundamental course. In this example, this is small logical architecture where you can see a taxi company ride share app, which is actually hosted in a serverless architecture, which consumes the serverless components, Azure function, the yellow one with the blue. This is the function symbol, and then you have a event grid topic, and then logic app. These serverless components are consumed to deliver the entire application. So that is proves that you don't need an underlying strong infrastructure for some of the business need, and some areas you need. But we are not saying like everything can be done with the Azure function, but Azure function can help you with where you don't need a complex infrastructure. So now you understand the serverless, which means like you don't need underlying infrastructures, and everything you need on demand, some components where you just run it, that will execute, and then after that it just sitting in a cloud, but it doesn't ask you to pay more money. Whereas in virtual machine with business logic, you have to pay for the virtual machine's uptime. Whereas in Azure Function, you don't need to pay for the Azure Function for a monthly charge. You only pay for the time that particular code is executed. If you have business logic to um, tell end user what is the weather, the user sending you some message, that message executed in the Azure function, that Azure function only going to the expense will be only for the time the function is executed. It could be like a millisecond or it could be one minute. That period you will be paying the cost for the usage. Otherwise, you're not going to pay anything. That is the beauty of Azure function. If you're going to be working in the modern app or modernization or serverless technology or event-driven architecture, these are the key areas in this industry currently. And if you are developing something, then you better have a hands-on experience with Azure Function and Logic App. So this course, part of the AZ 303, we are learning this messaging and serverless components. This is going to be a game changer in the industry. So whenever we go through here, have some homework at home. The Azure Microsoft documentations comes with lots of quick start tutorials which you can explore. In this course, we'll just go through some of the demos here. Then you can also see like how this serverless closely connected with microservice as well. Like in the older days, you have a monolithic infrastructure with the data, then that converted into macroservices and then mini services, which is in the modern days, everything become a microservice. So when you're developing any microservice, normally you go with the container, or you can also use some web app or APIs, or even this particular service can be a container or it could be Azure function, and that can be running whenever the business logic needed. It calls this Azure function and gives you the end result. So the next area you need to just understand the benefit of serverless computing and the drawbacks, right? As I mentioned, like you don't need to have a over allocating infrastructure. That is the one benefit. And then stateless logic. When you need a stateful logic, then you should go for a virtual machine. Azure function comes with the two flavor. One is with the pure serverless, another one with it's not a serverless, but it also solves some of the limitations. For example, in the drawback, you can see it can only run for 5 to 10 minutes. Default is 5 minutes. You can increase to 10 minutes. For example, your business logic going to run more than 10 minutes, then Azure Function serverless cannot support it. So for that, Microsoft, what they have done, it is still Azure Function, but instead of running in a serverless environment, it can run in a dedicated virtual machine. That gives you the workaround for addressing this drawback. So the next topic we will be exploring today is the Logic App. Logic App is more of like what do you call it? Like it's more of like a workflow kind of technology, where if you are familiar with on-premises technologies, either workflows, SharePoint workflows, Nintex, K2, there are lots of third-party workflows in the industry. Is anyone in this call use workflows in your day-to-day job? What kind of technology you use?
No, Karthik, I didn't have experience using workflows.
Okay.
Yeah.
So workflows are normally, we'll take one simple scenario where you will have to develop a approval process, or I can just show you this screenshot. This may helpful. So if you're developing some logic where you need the information has to come from one place, and then you execute, you get a data from somewhere else, and then based on the data, you again send the email. If the record value is true or false, based on that, again you continue some logic here. Normally in the if else conditions we write in code itself, right? um, but every time you have to develop a C# code or a Java, you have to write your logics on that. These workflows are ready-made functionality. For example, sending email to someone else, you have to write your code, but whereas here just a plugin, send email, and then it gives you the fields like a to CC subject and then body, and automatically sends email. And if you want to connect to Office 65 services, this has a connector. The Logic app has a various connectors, and it's more of like workflows is like continuous and having a reusable connectors, and make sure that it takes a minimal time to develop and run. It's more of like a no code solutions. In the modern world, you can hear lots of word like a no code solution, which means it's configurable for connecting or getting data. All you're going to use is drag and drop some connectors. The connectors will do the work for you. So Logic App is going to play a bigger role in this course, as well as in the modern world. No code solutions or serverless. So I have a couple of course related demos for separately for Azure Function and Logic App, and I also found some interesting tutorial today, which is going to be like we are going to use some cognitive services, as well as we are going to connect Outlook and Twitter. Based on the Twitter messages, understanding your sentiment detection. If you guys have a time, like we can go through couple of sessions. Like if the recording or the session ends in 40 minutes, then we can rejoin and complete. In meantime, if anybody wanted to go through parallelly, I'll post that tutorial link in the chat as well. Let me post it. So I sent you a link in the chat message. I'm going to execute this. It's more of like we are going to consume Azure Functions and Azure Logics, just to get some Twitter integration, Outlook integration. Based on the tweet, we are going to identify the sentiment of that message. So let me start with that. So can you see the screen now?
Yeah, yes, Karthik. Yeah.
So in this tutorial, we are going to perform this, like create a cognitive services API resource, and then create a function that categorizes tweet sentiment. Then we are going to use Logic app that connects to Twitter and add sentiment detection to the Logic app, connect the Logic app to function, and then send email based on the response from the function. So this gives you complete logic that can be related to your day-to-day job, or your this also helps you to understand integrations, connectors, a couple of serverless functions like Azure Functions and Logic app. Let me run that with our so the prerequisite, I need to create one Twitter account and Outlook account. I just created the Twitter account. Sorry, Outlook account. Let's create the Twitter account. I'll just pause the recording for a minute. So the first step, we create a cognitive services API resource. So I just go to my Azure portal. In case anybody having a struggle to use your free Azure subscription, or in case you need some support, please let me know. I can set up some platform for you to play around. Okay, so now we are in the Azure portal, and I'm going to create some cognitive services. So it says create resource and select AI and machine learning. So AI machine learning is the area where we get our machine learning. Here where we will get our cognitive services. So first I'm going to select text and analytics. So text analytics is here, and then I say create. So here custom question answering. So I'm going to select use these features to answer users questions or your data. So I select it. Select and create. And we're going to give a name for this resource group, create, and there will be a region. The region can be selected closest to ours. So for now, we just say Europe, North Europe, and the name of this instance, state sentiment, pricing tier, standard, or we can also say free. Then pricing here, free tier, legal terms, I confirm, I get responsible notification, confirm. Then I create. Okay, so just give in the end MK. So once this is created, is there an error anywhere? We don't see any error, right? So review and create.
I think Karthik, the basics still have a star in it. So I think
Yeah, that's what I'm checking. Like where
do you need to create new in the top resource group first?
yeah, I did. This is the new.
Yeah, but do you need to press that button first before?
Yeah, I did give this one.
Okay, all right. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay.
Okay, to yours. Both are on. It's still okay. It should supposed to create. Something wrong. Okay, so once the text analytics AI component, the cognitive component is created, we are going to copy a couple of values, like you normally the key of that cognitive service and the endpoint, because we need to call that and reuse, right? So this is the one resource we created. To call the services, we need that keys. So once it's created, we'll collect the keys and endpoint. Let me open a new notepad. And then once created, we collect key and endpoint. Then again, we'll go back to the create function. We create the Azure function. Then once Azure function created, we will be adding the triggers to the function. As I mentioned, like Azure functions comes with the out of the box triggers where you can use the triggers. Okay, so go to resource and key and endpoints. So here I'm selecting the copy clipboard, go to Notepad, paste the key, and same way the endpoint, we added the endpoint. Okay.
So Karthik, you've got two keys here.
Yeah.
Which one should we use? Like they
So
are
we
both.
use key 1, key 2 is more of like the reserved one.
Okay.
I think if you remember sometime back, we gone through this in different area where the keys, primary keys or key 1. It's more of like if you lost it, how do you use it and how you recover that.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so now we created and we collected that keys for use from function later. Now I go to the Azure function and say function app, and then I'm going to create a new function because we already have this Twitter sentiment app MK, that is the resource group we are going to use, and I'm going to give this function name Twitter API and then the MK. Then you select a code or a container. Because it's sample, we are just going with the code, normal piece of code. Runtime, we are going to use .NET, and version can be default one. And then I think we selected previously North Europe, right? North Europe. Okay. And all done, we just going to create. Normally when you create a function, I think if you remember, you always need to provide the plan and the storage account. Since we click the button, it automatically assigns consumption plan and also default one service account. So I just create it. Create. So this particular demo I have not done before, and I may be struggling in between. So stay with us. As you know, this is more of like Twitter-based sentiment, right? So the piece of code in the article you are seeing, hope you all have the link, right? If you already have the link, you can, while this is creating, you can also go through the configurations, what we do for the next one. So the next one, once the function created, we are going to add a HTTP triggers. Okay, deployment complete. I think the session will end in 10 minutes. So I call out after five minutes, we'll re-enter. So let me continue as long as. So now we have the function, and I'm going to check where we can add a new functions. So when I go to the functions, add a new function. So develop in portal, select the template. We are going to use HTTP trigger and then name the function name as we know the new function to test sentiment function, and the authorization level is just a function only, and then add. Okay, the trigger is added now. Now we are going to add the piece of code from the article. Control A. I hope you can see if you're familiar with the .NET code, you can see that you have the namespaces for this particular logic, and then you have the public method where you have all the default settings, which I'm going to replace by the code copied from the tutorial, where you can see the positive or negative or neutral. This is the logic we added for the sentiment to read. And so select to save after we've gone through that. Not sure what will come here. Okay, the warnings are there, not error. I'm sure it should be okay. Let's see test run. Input tab, body input. Okay, there's no logic and just test run. Body 0.9. So based on the parameter we are going to pass, this code is going to tell us the positive or negative. As we passed a 0.9, it shows the positive, and this is the logic currently we have. Then just a sample is done. Then let's create the logic app now. So go to the home again, create a logic apps. Okay, so the new consumption based. I think the initial one I'll select resource group for everything. Then provide the logic app name. Unique name is available, North Europe. That's good. Then I can do the review and create. So basically we are creating a logic app similar to a function. Then after we create it, we are going to connect this Azure function along with the Twitter and community services. So now the logic app is created. I'm going to have as I mentioned, it's more of like a workflow functionality where you can see lots of reusable connectors. By seeing this is the common triggers. When a message is received in a service bus queue, perform some action. When HTTP request is received, then you perform some action. So these are the default triggers. So I'm just going to do the blank logic here. Button and select the save button. So here So operations okay, so on this connector, we are looking for a Twitter, right? So then we're going to select the Twitter as a trigger. When a new tweet is posted, that is the trigger I'm selecting. And then I'm going to give my connection name, my Twitter connection name. This is more of like, you can see how easy to just to drag and drop. This is the no code solution concept. It's a very famous in Microsoft SharePoint designer workflows, then CRM, Dynamics 365, all this like Power Apps, these modern technologies are no code solutions. Lots of technologies are copying this and they're also implementing no code solutions. Okay, so now we have identified the Twitter connector from our logic app, and then we gave the name of that connection name and authentication type. We are going to use the default shared application, and then I'm going to sign in. So at the time of signing in, the Twitter account will come here like this. Can you see the screen? So where we have to sign in. So pause here. I just added my Twitter account, the one I created. So because I entered my password for that, it works. Now we have that connector added. Then the connector also comes with some basic configuration which we need to fill. For example, my Twitter tutorial, search text, I'm going to provide this tweet. Value in the text box 1 minute. And then our okay, so once you add it, I'm just simply save. So this is the Twitter keyword text we are going to use in this demo. So now what we did, we created the Azure function and we gave some logic. The function has a piece of code. It is going to receive a parameter, and based on the parameter, it is going to tell us whether positive, negative. Then we created the Azure Logic app. The Logic app has a no-code solution, which is we are going to use the default out-of-the-box connector for a Twitter, and the Twitter accounts we connected. Now we need to add the text analysis sentiment Azure Cognitive Services. So go to the, let me open portal.azure, where we have our cognitive service resource group and cognitive service. I go here. Or in the new step here. And choose operations. Let me check text analytics.